Hello, and welcome to Seeking Heaven, the Near-Death Experience and Other Phenomena. I want to welcome you to the channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and watch. Subscribe and watch the formal episodes that I have done for you guys. We have near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, angel stories, so many spiritually fascinating people that we've had on, and today is no exception. So today we have a very special guest, Lynn Russell. And Lynn, she is a near-death experiencer researcher. And so she's dedicated part of her life to doing this. She's also an author of 2 books. And we're going to bring her in to talk about that. And her books are Warple, which is a children's book, but she's known for her book that has received high ratings, which is Wonder of You, What Near-Death Experiences Say About Yourself. And so she is going to talk about what happens when you die, the things that she found out in her findings, and some of her untold, very rare, unusual spiritual experiences that she's going to bring to the table and just share some of her experiences. So thank you, Lynn, for being here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you, we were talking beforehand and we were having way too much fun. I was like, save it for the interview. We've got to jump in here because you really are an amazing person in your journey. And I think that we can learn so much from one another if we just listen. So before we get into it too much, let's jump into the NDE part of it, and then we'll weave in some of your other things that you have. But I know that it was your granddaddy that got you interested in this whole near-death experience. Do you tell us a little bit about that and what piqued your interest with this whole phenomenon?
Sure. Well, my grandfather died, and I never really knew him very much, so I didn't really mourn him or feel bad. But it made me realize that people died. That death was a reality, and that I was someday going to die. And that terrified me. My mother and my father was not religious at all. My mother was an atheist, and she thought, when I asked her, she said, "You're just going to disappear when you die." So that terrified me.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awful. It's not very hopeful.
So I was terrified, absolutely terrified that I would disappear. And I didn't want that. And actually, I've often wondered how she must have thought about death and disappearing herself, But anyway, so that started me on my journey to try and find out what did happen, what was happening. And so I spent most of my life studying all the different religions of the world and spiritual philosophies and thought. And I just kept going. I hadn't stopped yet, by the way. And then I had an opportunity to do this research for the near-death experience. And that was almost like a culmination of all the learning that I had done. It just put everything together.
So. Yeah, how did you meet? Now, you worked with Dr. Jeffery Long, who's been on this channel a couple times, actually 3 times. How did you get hooked up with him, and how did that all happen?
Well, I had retired, and I was going to write a book that had a woman who could astral project in the book and do things. But I wasn't sure if in real life she could actually do that. And so I thought I better check it out. And so I went to the internet to just look for OBEs and wound up in Dr. Long's site, NDERF, because they had a portion of it was dedicated to OBEs. I think that's finished now. But at that time, they had also had OBEs. And so, but I wound up with the near-death experience, and I was hooked. That was it.
Well, yeah, because you were getting evidence from people that have been there.
Yeah, Oh, it was wonderful. And there was a chat line back then. There's not one now, but there was a chat line. And I got on the chat line with people and getting to know them and so forth. And Dr. Long came along and asked for someone to do some research for him. And I had just retired, so I put my hand up.
Oh, wow. So you were helping with the chat, getting to know people, hear their stories. And then he said, "You're so great with this. Why don't you help me with research?"
No, we were just chatting, just a normal chat.
Oh. Now, how long did you guys work together?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I know that seems strange, but what he wanted was someone to do research for his book, Evidence of the Afterlife.
Mhm.
And so he would just send me, I just read all of the different accounts that people had sent to him. I just read them, and then, there's the questionnaire. So I would read the story, and then I would take the questionnaire and tear it apart. And so many people did this, and so many people did that, and that kind of thing. How many people saw the light? How many people went through a tunnel? Those kind of answers. And so that was what I did with him. And while I was doing that, in the beginning, I was interested in what happened to people when they died, and that kind of course, that was perfect. But after a while, I figured that, I knew it. But what really became more interesting for me was the deeper spiritual lessons that were coming back that we weren't picking up on. And so that's what my concentration was on.
Really? Okay. So now I'm curious. So what were some of the things that you started hearing what people would say?
Well, it wasn't, it was only because I read so many that pieces were putting together. For example,
Sure.
Everybody would have different experiences, slightly different. They're not completely different, but every tunnel was different. Every garden, if they went to a beautiful garden, it would be different. All the buildings were different. Everything was different. And I realized and learned that we create our own experiences. And that was a very significant lesson, very, very significant, because if we are creating our death experience, then we are also creating this life experience.
Yeah. Wow. Pretty profound. We're not even into the first 7 minutes, and that's freaking profound. No, really. That's crazy, but you're right. You're absolutely right. But why are they so similar though? Why, you wonder why some have, and this is just an opinion. We're just talking, but some have tunnels, some don't have tunnels, some have gardens. Why, do you see any similarities with certain types of people, like the ones that go to the higher levels?
No, it really didn't matter. Some people didn't go through any tunnel. They would automatically find themselves amongst the stars. Other people found themselves in a void, a black void. Some people just went immediately to the garden or whatever their heaven was going to be. And other people were greeted by their loved ones or by the light as soon as they left their body. So there isn't any one way. The most common way was the tunnel, but that wasn't the only way. There were tons and tons of different ways.
I saw the tunnel in one of mine. You know what I think it is? I think it's a portal.
It could be. It could be.
Or my thoughts of what that would be, or my interpretation of
Right,
a portal.
Yeah.
It's because we say tunnel, but it's not like it's underground London or anything. So, but okay, so that's really, gosh, you did do a lot of reading on that. So as you began reading, did it change you?
Oh yeah.
What sort of happened with you?
Because it was verifying all the studying that I had done. Because I read every religion, and every major religion, not the little ones, and even Jehovah's Witnesses and things like that, so that I understood why they were.
God bless you for
why they thought the way they did, or So I studied most of and a Mormon. I studied that one because again, I wanted to understand where they were coming from.
So,
But anyway, the point was that I just was learning so much. And then when the whole spiritual movement started in the 70s, and that's about when the hippies and the ashrams and all of that started around the spirituality thing. Well, then I just dove right in.
right, the dawn. What is it? Remember that song, by the Fifth Dimension, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Yeah,
that's right. That's
yeah.
right.
It was. You were right into that. Yeah, it's like coming back. So it should be your thing. It's coming back around. I keep waiting for disco to come back around. I don't know if it's going to happen. That's my version of heaven over there. I told Jesus I wanted a Soul Train line and a disco party, and he told me he could arrange that. So you're
whatever you want.
Well, if it can be anything we want. One lady, grandmother, came through and she had a skating party and pizza, and she was from New Jersey.
That's
from
wonderful.
New Jersey, called it pizza, and said named all the family. It was in a reading. I did named all the family and a skating rink. And the woman I was like, God, I felt really weird saying all this. And she was laughing. Oh, we love doing that together as a family. So her idea of having was a skating rink with a pizza party. Mine's a disco party with a Soul Train line as you go through the line dancing with people smiling at them. I don't know. I guess it can be anything you want it to be.
It can. Exactly.
So now, one thing before we get too much into the near-death experience aspect of it, because I'm very impressed that you study different religions. Did you come to some commonality with the major religions that you found, with all of them?
Yes, at the bottom, at the base of all of them is love and respect for one another and caring. Yeah, that bottom line.
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot of us stuff that piles on top, but the dogma and whatever. But the real bottom line is love and caring.
Right. And how do you see, I'm just curious, we're just having a chat. There's no wrong answers here. So how do you see now as religion? I mean, do you see it has its place for some? What do you see the purpose it serves, or does it?
Well, that question is asked quite regularly from people who have had death experiences while they're there. They're saying, well, is one religion the right one? And they're told repeatedly there isn't one. Whichever one fits for you is the right one. And I read one of the persons said that the reason why there's so many religions is because we're all different. And this religion fits this person and doesn't fit that one. So, yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, I love what Howard Storm said. He said, whatever one works best for you to bring you to God. And I was like, that works great. It's whatever resonates with you. So I thought that was really beautiful. Wow, that makes sense. So, so after going through and looking through this, I would love to hear your definition of now what you think religion versus spirituality is. Because you really know what that is. For people listening.
Well, as I said, each person has their own. But for me, because I've dug so deep for so many years, I've gotten to the bottom line. This is a little heavy, so you're sure you want to hear it?
I could roll with it, Lynn. I'm ready.
Okay. We are all one. There is only one soul, one spirit, and we are expressions of that. And that's the bottom line. We're all expressions of that one spirit.
It's crazy. I think that at some point, even possibly, maybe we were all part of the one source. Maybe we got bored and we needed some kind of whatever. And so then we sectioned off and we sectioned off and we sectioned off. And then we had to forget between lives where we were. We couldn't play the game because we've done it so many times. And then finally we forgot. And then it became more and more and more. And we forgot that we are all part of the one. Right.
I think we go through an amnesia when we get here as well, because I think that we have to work through our lives to get to the point where we can go back and understand that.
Well, since we're talking about the soul, and that's kind of what we're talking about now, and we'll just roll with this. What do you think about where we are at this present day and time? Because people, you keep hearing, we talked about in the 70s, the age of Aquarius, and now it's kind of back, and everybody's trying to, they call it different things. The consciousness evolution, being, that you're spiritually awoken or whatever this may be, and ascending from a third density to a fifth density and all of that. What do you feel about that? That you're hearing in comparison, because you've been on this journey a long time, and you've seen things. Do you feel that we're actually, I mean, there's some people obviously don't want to change, and they want to, whine and complain and have suffering and misery, and I'm not much war, I'm not really into that. But do you feel like that we are consciously trying to expand? Do you feel like this is happening?
Yes, so much.
Okay.
One of the goodest things about being as old as I am is I can remember the 40s and 1940s, and I can remember what people were like then.
Really?
And I can remember that in the 1940s, they would never have been the way they are today. I know there's issues, big time, and the United States is really suffering very much and going through turmoil right now, and that's sad. But it's things like people helping the animal that's stuck in ice.
Yeah, I know.
In the olden days, they would have walked by and said, "Gee, that's too bad," and ignored it.
Oh,
Now,
really? You
yes,
mean being more in touch with animals and the world and in the environment?
yes. And another thing is that with the staying with animals, people did absolutely horrible things to animals. I won't even go there because it's just disgusting. Animals were just nothing, and now we have a very strong consciousness of animals, and the same with the ecology and the environment. Now, I know that there are big businesses and big government who are looking at the dollar sign, but the everyday people care very much about the ecology and the environment and the climate change and all that. So that's another thing. We are kinder to each other generally. I know there are bullies, I know there are bad people out there, but they are the minority, but they make a lot of noise. They aren't the majority.
Oh,
And
I'm
so I
hearing you.
think,
The
yeah,
bullies are few, but they're loud.
yeah.
And
And
yeah,
so I think the world is getting to be a much better place. And there's a man by the name of Pinker, Steven Pinker,
let me write that
and
down.
he did a TED talk, and he talks about how the world has gotten better, and he shows us. I mean, like, you look at what
What's his last
things
name
were like.
again?
Is Steven Pinker, Pinker.
Just like you. Okay, that's how I wrote it. Okay. And
Yeah.
so he gives examples of that. So, I think that one point to mention is that there's so much, I mean, it's just, I try to limit, so I said that social media, because we actually have to get things done instead of being on there and I do like looking at the animals on there, and I do like looking at family pictures, but it can be intrusive, and it can be a distraction and so forth, and sometimes people are ugly. But between that, and then you have the news, which the news, they make money by creating what news, so they're going to hype stuff up, which I try not to watch at all
You
unless there's a
you have
hurricane.
yeah, yeah. You have to be selective.
Hmm.
So I'm on social media all the time. Well, not all the time, but I've got several social media places. And I have beautiful people with me because I reject the ones who aren't. I just reject them.
You know what? You have to be like that. Look at you. You become tough. a tough lady here, because you know what, I don't blame you. You have to be able to do that. But no, if there's anyone that gets, I was like, I don't even care if I know. I'm like, no, I don't need that in my life. But what I'm saying is that the bullies, and what we see in the public is not really. I think the average person is very kind and loving. I do.
Yeah, absolutely. The most, like the everyday person on the street is caring, is giving, is loving, and wants the best.
I think so. I think on the whole, I think the other is the exception, and they are louder. So,
Mhm.
so this is interesting. So let's go back in the 40s. There was a lot of, um, I guess there was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of, I mean, we're coming out of the war. There was a lot of oppression and so forth. How do you feel that things differ now spiritually?
Oh, like night and day. It's just, it's such a huge difference.
Do you think people are more aware now of their own
Oh,
self
yes.
as a
Oh,
soul?
absolutely. Absolutely.
And
There's a new church that, well, it's 100 years old or around there, and it's called Unity. And it's taking on like wildfire down in the States because it's a Christian and it talks about Christian values, but it doesn't load it up with all the dogma over top of it. It just stays with love and caring and those kind of things, the things that Jesus taught.
right,
And
without judgment.
and so what's happening now is that a lot of the more fundamental
Mhm.
churches are using the name unity. So you have to be
Are
careful.
you serious?
Yeah.
Really?
Because it's so popular.
Oh,
So
so they want
they're,
to get in on that, getting on that, get some more people coming into the congregation using the name. Isn't that funny? So that's interesting. Wow. So you are saying, well, that's inspiring to know that that you feel things are changing, that people
oh
will
yeah, there's
use
so many beautiful things happening today.
it.
Yeah, the world is just, when I think of how callous and cold people were, sexual abuse, people knew I was being sexually abused by my father. People knew, and nobody did a thing. Nobody did a thing. It was just the way it is. Or you just pretend it isn't there. You hit it. Nowadays, they take action. I just about fell over a few years now. What is it? 5, 10 years ago, when women started talking about being abused by,
Yeah, the Me Too movement.
and they actually listened. I thought,
Yeah.
how did that,
It's
what
true, they
happened?
did listen. Well,
So,
that's true, and now you got they keep coming out of the woodwork. You have Bill Cosby, now you got Como with all these, good Lord, I mean, there's just there, I mean, you just, who is it next? So,
yeah,
but no, you're right. I guess that's something that was swept under the rug, and we did want to talk about that because, uh, about abuse and about near-death experiences, because you said you also read several that had abuse and neglect, and I wanted you to talk about that, reading the reports of the near-death experience and the looking through those that were like that, because I came from abuse, but you were saying how they came from the parents were like this, and then yeah, I mean the fact that happened to you, it's it's really sick because it's so common. I cannot believe how many women
yeah,
guests that I have on. I mean, guys, when I say guys, I mean girls, and I
mhm,
mean men and women and everything in between.
yeah,
I just say it's just it's a slang term I use for everybody. But when I have people on, pay attention. A lot of these people have had either, if it's not childhood sexual abuse, then it's abuse in the marriage. Almost all of them.
mhm,
Almost all of them.
mhm,
And they don't
mhm.
show it because they seem like respectable, nice, like they've obviously gotten past, as they passed it, as much as you can. But they force their way through life to be the best person they can, and they try to use it. But why do you I don't know if it's gotten better or not. People still don't talk about it. They didn't want to talk about it when I was growing up. I had no safe person. I just had Brooke Grove on, and same thing with her. She had no safe terminal to go to. So I wonder if this is still going on. I mean, it would really be nice. That's one of those things that we're talking about, moving
Yeah.
society to a 3D to a 5D. We need to let this bad behavior and these dark things that are, people call them family ancestral curses, whatever they are, we need to let that go. And we do
Yeah.
not we need to expose the darkness and say, that's the end of it.
I'll tell you how I got over my sexual abuse. Now you're not going to believe this, and the physical abuse of my ex-husband and my father. My father was a bully. I got over it by understanding where they were coming from, by looking at them and seeing their past and their life and where they had been, and I was able to feel sorry for them. And then
Were they abused as
yeah.
well? Were they sexually abused?
Well, my father was, yes, he was sexually abused by his mother. And my ex-husband had absolutely horrible parenting. They were beaten. Both his parents were drunks, and they spent every red cent that they got on booze. The kids barely ate, and the father was so abusive. And so when I think about his story, my heart goes out to him. And I like, he's much better now. He's gotten over his alcoholism, and so he's battling that battle. But
Wow.
my heart goes out to how hard that was.
So
for
it's
him.
basically, what is it they say, that hurt people hurt people?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And but it's the cycle of something we need to quit. And I think that part of it admits to stand up and admit, that, like you said, acknowledge and forgive them and go on. And,
Yeah.
it's weird where they're coming from. It's coming from a place of low self-esteem. What was it you were saying, the parents you're reading about a lot when you were
No, not with the ones the parents I was working. I used to be a family counselor, and the parents that I was working with, their self-esteem was so bad.
that's it.
I couldn't get over it. I would have moms that were treating themselves worse than they would a criminal. I mean, they were so down on themselves, and you can't parent lovingly and a loving, kind, and considerate parent. How can you be that
No.
when you hate yourself so much? And that blew me away, because in reality, we're magnificent. We are so magnificent. And because we are, like I said before, one with the source. How can we not be magnificent?
Well, I guess if you're told repeatedly
Yeah.
that you're nothing,
Yeah.
or at some point that somebody starts to believe that. So, Lynn, if you could tell us a little bit about, I want the audience to know about your background and how far you've come, because I know that you've been a family therapist and a social worker, but you came from your own struggles in the past to get where you are now, and you've learned a lot spiritually as well. So maybe you could share a little bit about some of who you are and how you became to be who you are.
Okay. Well, when I was 7 in grade 2, I was put in special class, opportunity class, because I was assessed as being mentally slow. And so I stayed in grade 2 for 3 years. And then we moved to a place that didn't have an opportunity class. And so I was able to go on to regular classes, and I was fine after that, no problems. But by the time I was 16, I was in grade 8, and all the other kids were like 13, 12. So I quit school. You could quit in those days at 16. So that was the end of school for me. And so I didn't do very much. I became a hairdresser, actually. And I did that for quite a few years. And then I became a hairdressing instructor, and I taught hairdressing. And that was cool. But as far as, and then I wanted to marry a university graduate so that I would be able to stay at home and look after the kids, because I believed that I was mentally slow, and that's why I was sexually abused, because I was, people who aren't quite right are objects for abuse, and so that's why.
Well,
At
what if
least
you
that's
think
how
you
I
are
felt.
slow? I think you're very smart and very, I thought that right. I mean, you're very intelligent. Why
Yeah.
was that a formal thing they
Well,
did back then, or they
well,
just labeled you?
yeah. Well, what I wanted to marry this university graduate, but I thought, well, no university graduate's going to want me. So I had to start reading things like psychology and mythology and things like that, so that I would be able to pretend that I was smart. And that's what I did. I pretended to get, and I married my university graduate, but he
No.
wound up being an alcoholic and, and abusive. So I got my university graduate, but I had a nervous breakdown after we had 3 kids, and then I had my nervous breakdown. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because while I was in the hospital, the psychologist did an IQ test, because he didn't believe me that I was slow. So he did an IQ test with me, and he came back and said, "You're university material." Well, that changed my life. It literally changed my life, because I always thought I was in the bad marriage. I was the one who was to blame, because I was a grade 8 dropout. And so I packed up my books, my kids and I, and left my ex-husband. And then while I was separated, I sent to the Board of Education for grade 10 math and grade 11 English to do it on, mail. I don't know what it was called, but anyway, to do it at home study.
Yeah.
And so I was getting 80s and 90s, and I was rotten in math at school. So I couldn't believe this. So anyway, I eventually wound up going back to college, and I wound up with becoming a social worker, and I was a family counselor. And then after I was that, then now I'm a writer.
Well, but the thing is, it's never, some people, and we were talking about this pre-show, and I just thought it was important to mention, because I don't think it's fair to label people, and they would do that without test or whatever, but that they would just label people. And I
Mhm.
think it's just, and it's not right to label
Yeah,
yourself or
yeah,
others.
yeah.
But the exciting part about this is, of course, you changed that, and you ended up getting your degree later on and becoming a family therapist. I mean, in people's life, you go through seasons where you do different things, where and I think everything you do adds to everything else. And you look back and you can see where it adds to it. But that
Yeah,
you don't have to go to college right out of school. You know how people, you got to do this, and you get married, you go to college, and you got to there's no
yeah,
set formula. You can do anything that you want to do on your
yeah,
own time. I said,
yeah.
I'm starting well, I guess it's my second, you could say, third career, and later in life. It's not what I expected, but I'm having a blast, and I really love it a lot. So,
Yeah.
don't put times on it, because we're an eternal spiritual being. So
Yeah, we put limitations on ourselves that don't need to be there. Yeah.
well, wasn't it Louise Hay that she started her what is it, Hay House at 60, and she was running this
Right.
company that started it, and wrote her first books in her 60s, and became an artist in her 70s, and she was still
Yeah.
very busy and active in her 80s. So I mean, it's just a number, guys. I mean, we got to take care of these bodies so they last while we're here, but we've had lots of models. So um this is just one of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted people to know about that. Now tell us about your spiritually transformative experiences, because
Well, okay. Well, the first, I'm calling it one experience, but it was a series of 3 that sort of joined together. And there was a message with that. But can I back up and just tell you the main
yeah,
message? I just want to talk about
sure.
two things with what I learned from my life experience. First of all, people who are mentally slow don't get to make decisions. And there's always somebody there doing it for you. And so I didn't know how to make decisions. I didn't know. I was terrified when I separated from my husband because I didn't know if I could be, responsibility. And I was sure I was going to mess up.
Thought about that.
Yeah, that was one. And the other lesson I learned, because as I said, I was terrified of responsibility. And so while I was reading a psychology book, it dawned on me that responsibility and freedom are the same thing. They're flip sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
we don't realize that, but we cannot have responsibility without freedom, and we can't have freedom without being responsible.
Wow, that's some wisdom right there.
Yeah.
Wow. And the
So-
and the first lesson is you alone were enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So okay, I love talking about my spiritual transformative experiences because they were just so magnificent. Anyway, the first one, we're separated. I'm alone. I've gone through, I think I was just finished my second year of school, of college. And so I was washing dishes, and it was springtime. And the three kids, one was 3 years old, the other, no, pushing 4, three pushing 4. The other two were 5 and 6. So they were both at school. At least this kindergarten one, the 5-year-old, was in kindergarten in the afternoon. So all of these experiences, there were 3 together. They all happened in the afternoon when my youngest one was down to sleep and the other 2 were up at school. And it's almost like timing. Anyway, so I was doing dishes, and there's a window in front of my, above the sink, and there's an apple tree out there. And I was looking at this apple tree, but I wasn't thinking about the tree. I wasn't thinking about anything. I don't even know what. And all of a sudden, I was the tree, and the tree was me. There was no separation at all. I was the bird in the tree. I was the bug the bird was going to eat. I was every kind of life form that I could think of. It was just this, and it was a beautiful experience. It was like, yeah. But it didn't last long. Like that was maybe 1 minute. And the next thing I'm back to sudsy water. And so I had read about that because I'd done a lot of studies on spirituality. And so I'd read about cosmic consciousness. And I thought, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
I read, Then the next experience, I was washing fingerprints off the wall in the hall. And so again, I'm not thinking anything spiritual. And all of a sudden, I saw an atom. It was like the wall. I wasn't looking at the wall anymore. I was looking at this atom and the nuclei with the electrons and whatever going around. And then that expanded to our solar system with the sun and the planets going around. And then that expanded to our galaxies and the center, and that is spinning. And that went on to, from the micro to the macro universe. And during that time, I was getting messages, and the messages were all the way through this, that this didn't just happen. It wasn't an accident, that there was order and planning and a great intelligence behind it all.
Wow.
And yeah, that was a beautiful message. And
Beautiful.
I really liked that. But
I
then,
like that too.
then I got a message I hated.
Oh no, I don't know. Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, and the message said, and this was like knowing that there was no way I could dispute it. I wanted to say no bloody way. But anyway, and it said, your being is intricately connected with the operation of the universe. Well, that
Wow.
scared me. It really scared me. I thought, what? I figured I was less than a speck of dust when it comes to the whole universe.
Yeah, a
So
lot of people
how
think
could I
that.
have anything to do with it? Yeah, so I rejected that very big because I thought it meant that I was going to be responsible for something. And as I said, I had a hard time with responsibility. So um, then the next experience was days later again. And this time I'm in the living room. I picked up kids' toys and I'm just standing there. And all of a sudden there was a presence with me in the room. And I could feel this being there, but I couldn't see anything. All I saw was a living room. But this being was there. And all of a sudden, and it was more love than I have ever felt in my life. It was just wrapped around me like a big, huge blanket of love. And then I felt that I was somehow connected to this being or whatever it was. And then I heard words that were outside of my ear, and it was in the right ear. And it said, "This is where you came from, and this is where you will return."
Oh, wow. Now,
And
are they showing you something, or what do you
no,
think it's in
no,
reference?
it was all just it was knowing that there was something there, and the feeling of this love, and the feeling of connection, and then the words. That was all.
Oh, wow. That love. So you're going to go back to that love, that love.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That was a biggie. So when I realized that that's where I was going, it was like when, because I was still terrified of dying. I still thought I was going to disappear. I did, and and all that studying in religion hadn't told me anything about what was going to happen to me after death.
Yeah,
So I
most
was,
of them don't. They just tell you got to believe this because.
yeah,
And that, you know what? And they also the bypass the steps. A lot of religions talk about God, God, God. And you're like, well, I don't know what this is. And they need to talk about us as a spiritual being first. That's the first step. They miss that. We're a
yeah,
spiritual being and get people to get that because people think
absolutely,
your body,
yeah,
if you're a body worshiping a thing, that's just not, we're
yeah,
spiritual beings
yeah,
and connected as a whole. So it's kind of, I don't know. It feels left out in most religions,
yeah.
the
Yeah,
spiritual part.
yeah. And I think it's because, first of all, things have been passed down. And so they're only learning what they've been told to, you
Well,
know,
that's true.
and for the first point. But the other point is that um, we didn't know any of this stuff. I mean, NDEs are changing the world. They really are.
I think so,
And
really.
which is a good to the good.
In which way do you think they're changing the world? Because, and you've been around, a couple of years. So the NDE phenomena, to me, it feels like it's booming the last 10, 20 years. And before that, it might have been taboo or unheard of or whatever. But I would say recently we know that it's popular even with what is it, Surviving Death, that's on the Netflix
Yeah.
or whatever it is, different ones that are on there. So what do you think that's happening? What kind of movement is this near death experience phenomena creating, do you think?
Well, for one, is people didn't, even before, like, there were a few that did know about oneness, but most people didn't know what oneness was. What are you talking about? You know? And for me to be able to say that we are part of the source, um, people would have said that I was blasphemous, sorry, my English, because I'm saying I'm part of God. And that's, how can I say something like that? So, but there's only one source. There's only one soul. There's only one spirit, and we are a part of it. And so that things like that, and that came from the death experiences. Is a direct from death experiences. Kindness, and people working harder and harder on being kind. That came from the death experiences because we're talking. The most important thing is love.
It
You
is.
know, yeah, and so yeah, over time, I know it's going to take time because, and as I say, your country and other countries that are going through turmoil. I'm actually blessed that I'm in Canada because things are pretty calm here.
For now.
Yeah, well, you know what they talk about, gratitude. Yes, I'm very
Yeah,
grateful.
gratitude. Yeah, that's gratitude. Yeah, that's true. Gratitude.
And we have our problems here too, by the way. We're not white, perfect, everything. Yeah. So anyway, and so my next experience, and this was again, this is two parts. I'm working, I was a family counselor at the Children's Hospital. And I am writing a report on a family that I was working with. And I hear this voice again. And the voice says, I want to use you. Oh, there's an echo. I'm hearing an echo. Okay, there, it's gone. Okay, so I hear this, I want to use you. I was terrified. I got up, I looked around, couldn't see anything. And I thought, like, I want to use you, but and of course I knew what it was. I mean, I'd already heard the voice once before. So I rejected it. Like, why me? What do you expect me to do? I was dealing with 3 teenagers by this time at home. And, I was getting burnt out. And so anyway, it was like, why me? And I actually said, why don't you get a good Christian? Because they would know more about this stuff than me. And I never heard a word back, nothing. Absolute blank. And I ran around asking psychics and people like that, what am I supposed to do? And then I can decide whether I'm going to do it or not.
That's so funny.
And then of course nobody knew. And then I was 4 years later, and I was in terrible shape. I had been really ill, and my house had burned down, and I had this 3 teenagers that I was dealing with, and because they were right beside each other, 3, 4, 5, So anyway, the teenagers. I mean, I was in a restaurant with one of my daughter, my youngest daughter, and her friend. And I wasn't thinking about anything spiritual. And I hear this voice say, I still want to use you, And that's verbatim. That's verbatim. And so I said, okay, fine. I have nothing left to give. And it said, don't worry, I'm preparing you now. And that's the end. I haven't heard anything more since. But look what I'm doing.
So do you think the voice was who? What? Who? God?
Oh yeah, well,
God?
maybe
Your guide?
it was it was a guide. It might have been one of my guides. Yeah, could
That's
have
what
been.
God is from that realm.
Yeah, from the spirit realm, but
spirit realm, from one of
yeah.
your guides or something.
Yeah, I have no idea.
So intuitively, what do you think that meant? I want to use you.
Well, do you know what? I've often wondered that myself because I was already on the spiritual path, and I really don't know. Because maybe I'm doing what whatever it was that it wanted in my work now, or maybe I would have done this anyway without any warning or talking. I don't know. We just don't know.
I think that if you're connected to the divine, right? Or what does that mean? We're all connected to the divine, but if we acknowledge it and realize it, then we can receive messages. But so many people feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I don't know, so into the whole judgment dogma, when in fact it's just sort of our birthright. You may get someone may get a sentence here or there, or someone like me who I've been listening to the other side a long time, I get a lot more, but it's still the same stuff. I can tell when something's channeled by different people. I can. I'm like, and remember when I said yours, I said Jesus said, be the love you're created to be, and yours was almost identical on your website, what you say, and I'm like, you're dealing with the same divine
Yeah.
presence and love. And so it's the same thing. And that's why people I just don't understand why they get upset over religions or this and that. It's the same divine source. I mean, we're dealing with the same thing.
Absolutely.
And even if you just cover your eyes and don't believe it, that's still where we're from. That's still home.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I think it was just letting you know that you're needed and that you're important and that you're being used for something better. I just think it was to let you know you're worthy and not worthy, but
Maybe you might be right, because I was going through a rough time,
yeah,
and so
you
maybe
were
this was
important.
encouragement.
You were important. And I think even though we're part of the whole, which makes it sounds like a gelatinous, like the Blob and those, like, Steve McQueen movies where the Blob, this coming toward you. We are individual, but we're part of the whole. It's kind of not really a human concept, but individual at the same time. So I think it's all of us expressing divine love through the best way that we can, like with you, with writing, or however that may be, through however we express it through that love.
And the spiritual teaching I do.
Oh gosh, yeah, you do a lot of spiritual. So tell us the things that you're working on these days, because I love your website. It's full of wisdom. I want you to tell us about your books too.
Well, my book is The Wonder of You: What the Near-Death Experience Tells You About Yourself. And I had two, actually. The first one was taking the death experience down, and this, and, all the different things that happened, and looking at it from a broader perspective of what did it mean to our spiritual being, our reality. But it was a 5-star, and it was just very, very accepted. So a publisher came and asked me, because the first one was self-published, and so they asked me if they could publish it, and so I wrote it over again, and the second edition, is more in depth and goes more into a bit of science and the fact of our consciousness and how important consciousness is and thought. Yeah. So that's the wonder of you. And then I also have a children's book that I've just published. It's July the 20th, so not even a month. And it is about a boy who's heading for trouble. And he winds up in this world, and it's called Warpaw. The name of the place where he goes to and it's another dimension, and it has warm, fuzzy creatures there. And they teach him some life lessons that are spiritual, but it's not heavy. It's not heavy spiritual. It's through adventure and fun and experiences that he has, that he learns that all life is connected, and there's about the oneness. He learns that giving and caring are contagious, and they're very important. He learns that anger lashes back at you, and that it will hurt you as much as it hurt anyone else, and that you also that love is not just an emotion. It's one of the biggest powers that there is in the universe. So that's what my books are about.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to sit down and to write these books, but also it's a dedication, but it's also it's vulnerable, sharing a part of yourself. Now, before we close out, I wanted you, because the topic was what happens when you die and what are we here for? So I'm going to ask you, what do you think?
I think that the source, okay, if you imagine for a minute what it would be like to be major intelligence and pure love, absolute and nothingness around you, absolute nothingness. That would be torture. That would be so difficult. So I think creation happened in a nanosecond, and I think creation has to happen constantly, over and on and on. And whether it's us or whether it's outer space people or whether it's something else in the universe, creation is a must. And because we are a part of that one source, because there's only one source, then we are also creators.
Right.
And so I think that we really need very much to consider how we look at our lives, because the way we think comes back at us.
Oh, absolutely. What a beautiful thing to say. Yeah, I was told that on the other side, that be mindful of what you say and what you think, because it does reflect back and manifest. So you're absolutely right. And yeah, I've come to the same conclusion, that because we are from source and we are part of that web and we're part of creation, we are living, breathing creation.
Yes.
And we have to, as a soul, keep creating, and we all keep creating. It's just something that happens. It's just part of the cycle.
Yeah. You cannot not create. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that, because we are constantly creating through our choices.
Right. And also our
And
thoughts. Our thoughts, especially these days, I feel like I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed this is spun up. People must really be working on themselves, because I'll think of someone, I'll get an email. I'll think of someone, the phone will ring. These kind of things are happening. I know they can happen whenever, but I feel like they're speeding up a bit, that people are more connected on a spiritual level, on an etheric, astral level. And
absolutely.
and they're communicating. I've even at night, talking to one another, coordinating, talking. So things are speeding up. So I think it's what I think it is. I think that we're remembering who we are.
Good. Yes.
Yeah. I think we're remembering who we are, and and the truth being, we've probably all known each other.
Well,
right.
If there's only one source, then how can we not know each other?
How can we not know? Right. So that's also, we know everybody. And the other thing would be people you hear, well, if you're here now, how can you be reincarnated, and how can you know someone way back? Well, I believe the soul is so big that we can have a version here, a version on other planets, a version on the other side. It's multitasking. So it could be so many things. And I think there's a reason we have amnesia, so we can play the game well and learn the lessons.
That's right. That's right. If we remembered, if we knew what we were,
it might be
upsetting. We couldn't function here.
Well, we couldn't be objective. And if we really remember, we're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And the other thing is, if I knew that I had someone in Russia that had, a better lifestyle and a better so-and-so than me, I might be jealous. You know what I mean? I just think it's not meant for us to know, but I do think the soul is so big. I mean, look at it this way. I remember as a little girl, they would say that Jesus can be anywhere. I'm like, how can he do that? But in reality, we're spirit. We can be anywhere. So if we can be anywhere, why couldn't we inhabit different bodies as well? So I think it's so much bigger than we think.
And we chose to be here. It was a conscious decision for us to come here. And everything that we do in this lifetime goes back to the source. So what we're doing in our life is being fed back to the source constantly.
Right. It's like a download every night. Your computer it gets an update and downloads and a backup. So they get to see what Lynn Russell's doing every night, her latest writings. So now let's see. People can get in touch with you, Lynn K. Russell.
Well, I'm on Facebook, Lynn K. No, it's no K. Facebook is just Lynn Russell Near Death, and that's me. I'm on LinkedIn, and that's Lynn K. Russell, and I'm also on Twitter, but I have a hard time with Twitter because I feel like I'm whistling in the wind. Just so many people there.
You're like tweet, and you're like, where'd it go? It's like right, put it out there, like, where's the tweet? And it's so much going. It's like my tweet went away. I know you're right. It's true.
Yeah, just so many. Anyway, and I'm also on Instagram. And if I can ever figure out how to put stuff on there, it'll be great.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, you know that we used to be Instagram. They'd only do it with the phones, but now they can do it through the computer too. You can actually put things on it, so they are expanding a little bit. But yeah, you can always get in touch. I love your website,
Thank you.
and the information will be down
And
below.
and my website, lynnrussell.com. And you can, there's a contact there. You can contact me there.
Okay, great. Well, we've got all that down below, the contact information. You have been such a joy. And is there any final parting spiritual tips that you just want to pass along? You've been
I
such a
just
joy.
want, yeah, I want everybody to really honestly, it's not just airy fairy talk. I want you to think that you are magnificent, and you really, really need to understand that and stop putting yourself down.
Yeah.
Because you're beautiful.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, and it's love. We got to love ourselves first before we can love other people, before healing can begin, right? We need to heal this planet. We need to heal within ourselves, and we need to help heal others. So, look, you're welcome back anytime. You're such a joy and blessing. And I'm really glad that that spiritual guide said, hey, I need to use it for some stuff. And I think that they've been busy doing that. So that's good. Well, look, much love, and thank you so much for your time
It was
today.
a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.